Hello YouTube, it's Martin, and today's video is going to be completely different. I have just returned from Spain from Camino de Santiago, and even though I did not plan to do a video about my journey, I decided I would do it to share my experience and tips for someone who is maybe considering to do the same. I will post the timestamps in the description, since I don't know how long this video will be, and also because I plan to do only one video about this topic. So I will try to include everything I think is important and useful. Even though this video is not mostly about photography like you are used to on this channel, I have included my personal photos, and I will be back with another photography video next week. So let's get started. First, I would like to start with a short history in case you have never heard about Camino de Santiago, or you are just wondering about legends and stories around it. The Camino de Santiago, also known as the Way of St. James, consists of a large network of ancient pilgrim roads stretching across Europe and coming together in Santiago de Compostela, at the tomb of St. James. It's one of the three most important Christian pilgrimages, in addition to the ones to Rome and to Jerusalem. One of the main symbols of the pilgrimage is a scallop, which has many meanings. It is often used together with an arrow to show you the correct way, and also used by pilgrims who simply attach it to their bags. There are also myths and legends about the origins of the symbol. Let's just take a look at the two most common. When the ship carrying the body of St. James was hit by a heavy storm, the body was lost in the ocean. After some time, it was found undamaged and covered in scallops. The other one talks about wedding taking place on a shore when the ship with the body of St. James was approaching. The groom fell to the sea together with his horse. Through miraculous intervention, they survived, and when they emerged from the sea, they were covered in the seashells. Now that you know this short history, it's also worth to mention that some of the roads are also listed in the World Heritage List by UNESCO. The most popular one is the French one, and the second most popular one is the Portuguese way. The one I took was the North one, which starts in Irun and covers over 827 kilometers. I started in Jans and walked about 450 kilometers, so something like a half of Camino del Norte. The reason for that was I joined a friend who wanted to walk the whole Norte, and I didn't actually have time to walk all 827 kilometers, so I decided to join him in the middle for 3 weeks. Now, if I had to decide again, I would definitely pick the one where you can walk from start point to finish. That being said, if I had more time, I would have still picked the Norte over Frances, mostly because it feels much more pilgrim-like. To explain what I mean by that, I walked the Frances for last 2 to 3 days because the Norte merges with Frances before Santiago. And maybe it was due to walking Frances in the latest stage of the road, but it felt very touristy and commercial. When walking the Norte, there were days when I didn't even meet anyone or almost any shop. But when walking Frances, at least the last 2 days, I had seen hundreds of people and coffee shop almost every 500 meters. It was actually quite a shock, but it can also depend on the season. Either way, I would recommend to walk the whole road, or at least much more than the last 100 kilometers, since that's the amount required to get the certificate, and that's why this part of the road looks much different. The reason being that the certificate can be useful to many people from Spain and other countries for their job. I had actually started in May and finished at the beginning of June, which I think was actually a pretty good time to walk. I would much rather prefer walking with warmer clothes and take it off during the day as the weather progresses than suffer those super warm days during the summer. So if you can pick a date, I would recommend doing it at the start or at the end of the season rather than summer. Not only because of the weather, but also because of the number of people. When you are deciding whether you would like to walk alone or with a friend, it is important to understand that everyone has their own pace. So you will either slow your friend down or walk too fast or the other way around. Now, even when you both agree about the pace, it is still nice to have some time for yourself to walk alone. If you don't want to walk completely alone during the whole trip, you can just split up with your friend in the morning and meet him in the hostel, also known as an albergue. Oftentimes you will actually meet new people in the albergue who you might want to walk with the next day. So my experience with safety is rather positive, since I didn't have any negative experience. The roads felt pretty safe, and even leaving my stuff like smartphone in the charger in the albergue was not an issue. That being said, I did, however, heard from few people about their stuff being stolen, but it was never from pilgrims. So watch out for your things, but don't be too scared. I think Spain is overall a pretty safe country. I would recommend starting slowly and walk from 20 to 25 kilometers per day, at least for first few days, especially if you are not used to walking for longer periods of time. And even if you feel like walking longer, it's better to let your body get used to the load. Now I'm going to talk about several approaches and types of pilgrims you can meet during the Camino. You can actually meet people with tents and without mobile phones, only having like paper maps or books. This way is really interesting, and I've met some pretty cool people walking Camino this way. They usually take the cooking tools, so the only thing you need when walking with your own equipment is to stop from time to time in the albergue to wash your clothes and take a shower. It is however worth noting that it is not allowed to have a tent outside of camping areas, and it usually costs from 5 to 12 euros per tent. So the people camping outside usually wait until the evening and then just build a tent wherever they want when it gets dark. When you don't walk with your own tent and don't want to sleep outside, the cheapest option is usually official pilgrim albergue with prices from 6 to 12 euros per night. You usually share a room with many people, so it's very useful to have eye shade and earplugs. If you are tired of staying with other people, you can also find regular hotels or use Airbnb. The single room usually costs an extra 10 to 20 euros, but sometimes also much more depending on the demand. In case you're tired of carrying your bag, you can also often use a service that will transfer your bag from albergue to albergue, and the cost is usually about 6 euros per bag. Another option is also to ride a bike. To get the certificate, however, when riding the bike, you need to ride at least 200 kilometers, as opposed to 100 when walking. It's also good to know that at the end in Santiago, you can use the postal services to let your bike or the bigger luggage or whatever you might have shipped by the postal office to your destination, and you can simply take the flight ticket back home and get your bike by post. I don't know the prices since that's not what I used, but you can check it on the internet. The one I used, and almost the most common way, is to carry your backpack yourself and staying in the cheapest albergues together with other people. It is a nice way to meet new people and talk to them. A pilgrim passport, or also known as credential, is a document that you have to get at the start of your journey. You can usually get it in the pilgrim's office if there is one at the place you are starting, or in many albergues, monasteries, and so on. Just Google where to get credential in the location you are about to start. Now, I have also found on the internet you can actually create your own credential with just a piece of paper, but it actually costs like 3 to 5 euros, so I think there is no reason not to get it. And also important to note, it's necessary to have one if you want to stay in the official pilgrim albergues. Plus, you will also need it to get your Compostela, which is the certificate that you can purchase for 6 euros from pilgrim office in Santiago. You can also buy a tubus for 2 euros, so if you want to get one, you don't have to worry about destroying it on your way back. I didn't want to get one, so this is just the one from my friend. Okay, so let's talk about what was in my bag. My bag had about 33 liters and it was one of the small bags you could see on Camino. When I was researching what I should take with me, it was often recommended not to take a bag that is heavier than 10% of your body weight. In my case, it was 8 kilograms. As I didn't want to buy anything for this trip, I took my cross-country skiing clothes, such as this Windstopper jacket, 3 short sleeve t-shirt, 1 long sleeve t-shirt, sweatshirt and shorts. Those can be comfortably layered up in case the weather is cold. The shoes I took with me are those barefoot sandals, which I actually liked a lot, but I would recommend them only if your bag is under 10 kilograms and if you are actually used to walking in barefoot shoes. I walked probably about 60% of my journey in those and the rest in my running shoes. I don't own trekking shoes and I didn't want to buy them just for this trip, but if you are used to walking in those, I think it's a safe bet since almost anyone I met had the trekking shoes. You can find the whole list of my things in the description. The things I did not start with, but I wish I would, are the trekking sticks. I got them 2 days after the start because my knees were actually hurting from those elevations. The cost was something like 15 euros each and you can actually get them in Decathlon or in any bigger city. I also didn't bring cream or Vaseline for my feet to prevent blisters and cracks in my skin. A cloth bag is useful when you leave your hotel for shopping, so you don't have to buy plastic bags every time. I didn't actually have one with me, but I got this one from my friend. What I would definitely take with me next time would be a needle or something you could use for blisters and disinfection. What I wouldn't take with me next time would actually be my camera. I was actually so tired from walking and having it around my neck was so annoying, so I didn't even take it out of my bag. That's why all photos I took were taken by my iPhone. I will get to that later. Now let's talk about budget. I started on May 23rd and returned home on 11th of June. I spent last 2 days in Santiago, which was actually the most expensive part of my journey. For 2 days I paid about 55 euros and meals there cost between 10 to 20 euros in restaurants. You can get around that by cooking yourself or buying food in the supermarket. I usually bought the dinner in an albergue every second or third day, and the dinners there usually cost about 8-9 euros. Accommodation there usually costs 6 to 10 euros in the big albergues and 10 to 15 in the small ones. You can also sometimes find an albergue with donations, and those are usually pretty cool. So if you have a chance to stop in those, I would definitely recommend that. Overall, I spent about 500 euros, which is around 25 euros per day. That being said, without the last days in Santiago, my average was around 20 to 22 euros per day. After you start your journey, you will notice the yellow arrows showing you the direction. You can get around basically only with that. You can also buy a guidebook, or, and that's what I recommend, you can download an app for your smartphone. The app that I used is called Buen Camino. It is a free app and you can also download the content for cases when you are offline. The app is very useful for planning your day and checking the elevation or available accommodation with prices. It will also show you the map and direction you should go. In case you're not walking Camino completely offline, which is by the way pretty good, you might be wondering what apps are actually useful to install to your smartphone. So basically the apps that I used were the Buen Camino app, which I have talked about already, WhatsApp app in case you want to connect with other travelers that you are going to meet for discussing accommodation, food, or just to keep in touch with some cool people you meet on the way. I have also used Audible for audiobooks or a similar app in your own language. And then depending on how satisfied you are with the native camera app of your phone, you might consider getting one from a third party. I had also used Google Maps for checking approximate distance, since that's one of the few things Buen Camino is not that useful for. Just be aware that the Google Map app usually shows the fastest way, and that's often not Camino, so do not use Google Maps too much. Other than that, I was also listening to music or taking some notes, because you're going to spend some time thinking and walking alone. I would still recommend not to use your phone too much, and maybe try to disconnect yourself from the internet while on the journey. So eating and getting a food pretty much also depends on your budget. You can often find a restaurant to have a meal, but it's usually more expensive. It will usually cost you from 10 to 20 euros, and there were actually many restaurants and cafes on the last part of Frances, but not too many on the Norte. Sometimes you would find only one during the whole day. When you want to stay in the budget, you can often find a special Peregrinos menu with prices around 8 to 12 euros. Other than that, you can buy food in supermarket to cook yourself, or just buy something like a salad, instant soup, or microwave ready packed food. Those are actually pretty good and very cheap. When you are shopping for food, keep in mind that what you buy and don't eat, you will eventually have to carry to the next destination. So often you want to buy things for just dinner, next day breakfast, and maybe some snacks for next day. Try to buy exactly what you need, so you don't need to carry it to the next destination. As I'm allergic to gluten, I was a little afraid whether I will find food every time, so I took with me some emergency Insta packages that I would just mix with water in case I would not find anything. However, Spain is actually a very gluten-free friendly country. They usually have at least one option for gluten-free people, or even for lactose intolerant people. They even cooked gluten-free pasta for me from the Peregrinos menu. All you need to do is tell the staff sin gluten, and they will know what you mean. To my surprise, I also found the gluten-free and lactose-free version of the Apostol or St. James cake, which was really cool. So I didn't even need to use my emergency instant food. That being said, being gluten-free often means you will have just one and only option in the supermarket. But as this journey is not a food festival, I guess you can manage for a few days. I see free time activities as activities you can do while walking alone and activities you can do after you arrive to the albergue. While you are walking, I was either just walking without any music or anything, or I was listening an audiobook or just normal music. After you arrive to the albergue, what you usually want to do is to take a shower, and if the weather is nice, you usually want to wash few things in hand and let them dry by the sun. If you do this every day, it will compensate for the rainy days when you have to rely on a washing machine and dryer. After that, you probably want to go shopping for dinner and the next day. Other than that, there are sometimes board games you can play with other pilgrims, or just take a book with you. I probably would not take more than one, to be honest. As you may know, this is actually a photography channel, so I'm going to share with you my thoughts about photographing during Camino. I walked for first few days completely offline and didn't take any photos. I think it's a great way to experience the journey and not be distracted by everything. After that, you learn you don't need to take hundreds of photos. I would also recommend you to select your best 30 to 40 photos when showing them to your friends and family. It's super annoying, at least for me, when someone wants to show you the photos of their vacation and there are like 400 of them. I was taking photos during last 2 weeks of my journey and I have about 45 photos. Now, I'm not saying there are many keepers among them, but you develop some sort of feeling for each photo, and that's why it's hard to judge them. That is usually why it's recommended to edit your photos much later you take them, so you can kind of detach yourself and be objective when you judge them. That being said, I have taken a few photos that I actually really like. In terms of equipment, I took a small compact camera, imagining myself having it around my neck and taking photos. It turned out it was actually so annoying. I just reached for my phone as I was using it for mapping anyways, and it was in my pocket. After all, the best camera is the one you have with you. As for the camera app, I have purchased the Pro camera app, and actually the only reason was that what this camera app allows you to do is to take pictures in the ratio 3:2. The native iPhone app takes the pictures in the ratio 4:3, which is then really annoying if you want to have all your photos in the same ratio. You will have to crop them one by one. Other than that, I don't think it really matters what app you use for that. Okay, that's it for today. I hope I have covered the most essential things you might be interested in. I will leave some links with more information in the description, and I will see you next week when I'm back with another photography video. Thank you for watching.